folks. Showtime.
The Living Cell.
Tony, look!
What, Jenna?
The poster!
What Celebrity Squares? To play Celebrity Squares, push here.
I guess there's only one way to find out.
I don't see anything.
Just because you can't see something doesn't mean it's not there. Ta-da! For me, that would be a light.
Who are you?
Who am I? Well, I'm Marty Micro, my dear girl.
I'm Jenna, and this is my friend. His name is Tony.
Charmed.
What is Celebrity Squares?
I'm really glad you asked me that, Tony. It's a game about cells.
Cells?
Yes, cells. They're the building blocks essential to life. I have them, you have them, we all have them. All right, let me put it this way. All living things have 5 basic functions. Sherman, tell the kids what they are.
Thank you, MM. The 5 basic life functions are to grow and develop, to use energy, to reproduce, to respond to their environment, and to get rid of waste.
Now, all living things tend to be different, right? But they all have a few things in common, too. Sherman?
Common characteristics of living things would be the ability to adapt to the environment, the ability to use energy, sensitivity to the environment, reproduction, the ability to grow, and the presence of cells.
Yes, kids, the presence of cells. It's a very big subject about very small subjects. I have an idea. How would the two of you like to play Celebrity Squares?
Sure.
Great! Sherman, take it away.
It's time to play Celebrity Squares.
The rules of the game are simple, kids. It's like tic-tac-toe, but it's a little bit different. In each one of the squares behind me, you'll see a special celebrity. I will ask the question. The celebrity that you have selected to answer the question will answer. Now, you can either agree or disagree with their answer. If you make the right decision, you'll receive either an X or an O in the square. Get it?
Got it.
Good.
What's a celebrity?
What's a celebrity? I'm glad you asked me that. They're funny, they're kooky, they're small, they're essential. Did I mention they're small? But with the help of our magic microscope... Ah, that's better. Let's meet our guests. Sherman.
Our panelists today come from all over and inside the living world. In the upper left square, our favorite one-celled organism, bacteria. In the center top square and visiting us from a cell, mitochondria. Next to him, our favorite storage guy, vacuole. Below vac and straight from the pond, protist. A special treat, sitting in the lower right, virus.
Hey, that's enough.
Taking up residence in the lower center, fungus. Our jelly-like friend at the lower left is cytoplasm. Above him, and hailing from a plant near you, chloroplast. And, of course, always the center of attention in the center square, nucleus.
Okay, the two of you know the rules. Let's play Celebrity Squares. Jenna, you pick first.
I pick nucleus.
Going for the center early. Okay, nucleus, here's your question. What would be considered the building blocks of life?
Well, that's easy. I would say cells.
Jenna, do you agree?
I agree.
Let's find out.
All living things are made of cells. And these cells are the smallest and most basic unit of living matter. You might say that cells are the building blocks of life. Although all living things are made of cells, all cells are not the same. In other words, an organism with many cells usually has many different kinds of cells. Each kind of cell has a specific function for the organism. Cells are organized into tissue. Tissue is a group of similar cells that work together to carry out a job. Each tissue has its own job or function. Cells that make tissue work together to perform the basic life functions that keep organisms alive. However, every individual cell can perform all of these functions for itself.
An X in the center, Sherman. Okay, Tony, your turn.
I pick virus.
Virus. What was Robert Hooke famous for?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I know. Wasn't he in... Oh, yeah. He was in that Peter Pan story.
Tony,
I disagree.
let's take a look.
In 1665, a scientist by the name of Robert Hooke discovered cells when he observed a thin slice of cork through a microscope. The tiny walled spaces he saw in the cork reminded him of tiny rooms, so he called them cells. Almost 200 years later, scientists began to realize that Hooke's cells were a part of all living things. Matthias Schleiden studied a variety of plant tissues and found that every type was made of many cells. Theodor Schwann found that all animal tissues were also made of cells. Schleiden and Schwann were considered to have begun the cell theory. There are 3 ideas to the cell theory. Cells are the basic units of life. All organisms are composed of 1 or more cells. And all cells arise from pre-existing cells.
Robert Hooke discovered cells. That's what we were looking for. Good instincts, Tony. An O in the square, if you please. Jenna, your turn.
I pick vacuole.
Okay, vacuole. What does a plant cell have that an animal cell does not?
Well, I would have to say that a plant cell has a cell wall and chloroplast, and an animal cell does not.
Thanks for the props, Vac.
I disagree.
Well, I'm curious myself.
There are 2 types of cells. Cells that have a nucleus, an area of the cell that controls the cell's activities, and cells that do not have a nucleus. Let's start with the types of cells that have a nucleus. These would be the types of cells you would find in plants and animals. Along with a nucleus, plant and animal cells also contain a cell membrane, cytoplasm, vacuoles, a power plant, and a chemical factory. Everything they need to carry out the basic life functions. However, plant and animal cells are not made up of all the same parts. For example, only plant cells have a cell wall and chloroplasts. The basic differences between most plant and animal cells are covering. A plant cell has a thick wall. An animal cell has a thin covering called a membrane. Color. Most plant cells have green coloring. An animal cell does not. Shape. Most plant cells have a boxy shape. Animal cells have a wide variety of shapes.
Cell wall and chloroplasts. That's correct. Tough break for you, Jenna. Sorry, there's no X in the square. Tony.
Cytoplasm.
I got your back, Tony.
Cytoplasm. What are the parts of a cell commonly known as?
Well, since I'm one of them, I should know. Organelles.
I agree.
Let's see if Cy is right.
We know that each cell has different parts. These parts, or structures, are called organelles, and they all have different functions. The organelles include the cell membrane, which is one of the three main parts of most cells. The cell membrane covers the cell, but it does have tiny holes to let in needed materials, while others let waste leave the cell. The cell membrane also holds the parts of the cell together and separates the cell from its surroundings. Within the cell membrane is the cytoplasm. This is a jelly-like substance that contains many chemicals to keep the cell working properly. The nucleus, another one of the three main parts of most cells, controls cell activities. It's sort of like the cell's brain. Within the nucleus are chromosomes, which are thread-like structures that control an organism's traits and ensure the production of new cells. The mitochondria, or the cell's power plant, breaks down food and releases energy acquired from food. The chemical factory makes building materials for other parts of the cell to use together, helping the cell grow and change. The vacuole provides storage for food, water, and wastes. Chloroplasts, found in plants, make up the food factory. They contain chlorophyll and use energy from the sun to make food. Animal cells don't have chloroplasts because they get their energy from food they eat. The cell wall is a rigid layer that supports and protects the plant cell.
Excellent, Tony. The parts of a cell are commonly known as organelles. O gets the square. Did you know that there are cells that have a cell wall and a nucleus that aren't plant cells?
You go, Marty.
They are fungus cells. Now, the difference between plant cells and fungus cells is that some fungus cells have more than one nucleus, they don't have green chloroplast, and they don't make food.
It's hard to be humble.
Jenna, your pick.
Hey, as long as we're talking about cell similarities here, how about some consideration?
Protist is right. The protists are a type of cell that are similar to either plant cells or animal cells. The difference is that a protist is a separate, one-celled microorganism that lives in pond water.
I'd like to keep that to myself.
Jenna, it's your pick.
I pick fungus.
Wise choice.
Fungus to block. Fungus?
Yes, MM.
What type of cell does not have a nucleus?
Dear friend of mine, old bacteria.
I agree.
And the answer is?
There are cells that contain no nucleus at all. They are one-celled organisms called bacteria. A bacterium has a cell wall but no nucleus. The chromosomes, usually contained in the nucleus, are scattered throughout the cell. Also, bacteria do not have many cell structures. Bacteria are much smaller than most plant, animal, or protist cells.
That's right. Bacteria do not have a nucleus.
Well, I have other fine qualities, though.
And X blocks Tony. Tony, your panelist.
Mitochondria.
Now, the brains are on the top row, Tony.
Mitochondria. In cells, what is diffusion?
Well, I'm not sure. Yeah. Diffusion is the movement of particles from when there are a lot of those particles to an area where there are not so many particles. You got all that?
I disagree.
The answer, if you please.
Diffusion is one method of transport in cells. Particles move from where there are a lot of them to where there are less. An example would be drops of food coloring in water, eventually diffusing into the water, yet no material has crossed over a membrane. When particles do move through the cell membrane, that form of diffusion is called osmosis. Osmosis is the movement of water and dissolved materials through cell membranes. Osmosis is a type of diffusion, and it always involves materials crossing over a membrane and always involves water. Diffusion itself doesn't need energy from the cell for movement. This energy-free movement of materials is called passive transport. Active transport is the movement of materials against the usual flow of diffusion or when materials are particularly large. Active transport requires energy. Not all materials a cell needs are small enough to simply diffuse into the cell. Cells often need more of a substance than they can get through diffusion. 1/3 of the energy made by a cell is used for active transport. The energy required for transport is supplied by the mitochondria. Mitochondria needs food, oxygen, and water to produce this energy. The waste product of this process is carbon dioxide.
Mitochondria was right. Sorry, Tony. No O. Jenna.
Mitochondria again.
I'm batting 1,000, kid.
Okay, for the win. Mitochondria. Is a virus a living cell?
Nope.
What'd I do to you?
No offense.
Hey, forget about it.
I agree.
To the answer.
A virus does not have cell parts, nor is it living. Therefore, a virus is not a cell. The only thing a virus contains is part of a chromosome that has plans for invading living cells. The only basic life function a virus performs is reproduction.
And we have 3 in a row. Sherman, tell Jenna what she's won.
Well, they both won. By knowing what a cell looks like and how its parts work, they can now identify all types of cells and why they are important. And why are they important? Why, all living things are made up of cells. They are the basic unit of structure and function of all living things. We like to call them the building blocks of life. We now know that cells were discovered by Robert Hooke. There are also 2 types of cells, one with a nucleus and one without a nucleus. The types of cells with a nucleus are plant and animal cells. They are different too, though. The difference between the plant cell and the animal cell is that the plant cell has a cell wall and chloroplasts. The animal cells do not. We know that a cell is made up of various parts or structures that make it possible for the cell to function correctly. These parts are called organelles. And what is the cell without a nucleus? Time's up! The bacteria cell. That's right, bacteria. Back to you, MM.
I hope the 2 of you enjoyed the game. I know I learned a lot. What about you?
Oh yeah, that was so cool.
And thank you, panelists.
Oh, you're welcome.
No problem.
Ta-ta for now.
No prob.
For more great videos, call 1-800-483-3383 or visit us online at schoolvideos.com.